It's one of the oddities of New York politics, and trust me, that's saying a mouthful here. For the past 2 years, voters, they've sent more Democrats to the state Senate than Republicans, but the chamber has actually been run by the GOP, in large part thanks to this guy. State Senator Jeff Klein. He led a group of 4 Democrats to form the Independence Democratic Conference, basically splitting up power with the GOP. That was until this week. Now, Klein is bringing the IDC back into a partnership with other state Democrats, a move politically calculated, and it could change how Albany functions. And this afternoon, Senator Klein sat down with Andrew.
And you know, Rich, it's interesting. In our conversation, Senator Klein was much more focused on the past and the future, what the IDC has accomplished and what he says it can do going forward with the Democrats. He spent less time focused on the present and the political calculations that clearly led to this week's reconciliation. And Klein, a Democrat, was something of a Democratic cheerleader in our interview, talking about the need to elect more Democrats to the state Senate. You've said that the IDC is moving back to the Democratic caucus in part because there are some key progressive social issues that you haven't been able to get past with the IDC affiliated with the Republican Party, correct?
Well, this is going to be the Independent Democratic Conference and the Democratic Conference in a coalition. The Independent Democratic Conference is in existence now for 4 years, and we're very proud of our legislative accomplishments, things we were able to do in a bipartisan fashion. Marriage equality, increase in the minimum wage, the SAFE Act, the toughest gun law in the nation. But when you end a legislative session, it's a 2-year legislative session, you celebrate your victories and you sort of take a look on what things you didn't get accomplished and hope to accomplish them in the next legislative session.
And those issues include campaign finance reform, the DREAM Act, and abortion rights?
Sure, codifying Roe v. Wade in New York.
Why wouldn't you have had more leverage to be able to exert more influence in getting those issues passed with the IDC being affiliated with the Republican Party as opposed to the Democratic Party? I mean, Democrats still support all of those issues. The governor still supports all of those issues. Wouldn't you have had more leverage inside the Republican caucus to try to influence those in the state Senate than as members of the Democratic caucus?
Well, we were never part of the Republican conference. So we're a separate conference, the Independent Democratic Conference. And it's clear it's probably much easier to get the DREAM Act done, to get a campaign finance reform system in the state of New York with a public match, to actually codify Roe v. Wade and protect a woman's right to choose by actually having a coalition between the Independent Democratic Conference and the Democrats. Remember, the IDC may be a small conference, but we're the only conference that's 100% pro-choice, 100% behind campaign finance reform, as well as 100% behind the DREAM Act. If you break up those issues, we don't have enough Democratic votes to pass those on our own. And we have no Republican votes to pass any of those issues. So I think moving into the election, it's important not only to elect Democrats, but elect Democrats that support these key issues. On
the fiscal side of the equation, there is some frustration with Governor Cuomo and with Democrats, including the IDC to a large degree, especially about fiscal issues. The estate tax, the bank tax, a larger millionaires tax, where the governor has said he doesn't want to go there. And is the IDC feeling some of the heat within Democratic circles from those on the left who say, you know, socially, the IDC and Governor Cuomo have been plenty progressive, but not so fiscally?
Not really, because I think we struck a very important balance in last year's budget. One of the things that the IDC advocated for was a very robust program that we called Affordable New York, to make New York more affordable for working families. We achieved that. We achieved universal pre-K, $300 million just for the city of New York. To make sure we keep our promise to toddlers all over the city of New York. We actually restored child care subsidies to make it affordable to have decent child care and be able to go out and get a job. We were able to help senior citizens with the high price of prescription drugs, make sure we help seniors with spiraling rents by allowing them a rent freeze. So I think the balance that the IDC struck, and these were our signature issues, I think offset some of the business tax cuts that the governor wanted. But remember something, we have to be mindful of the fact that we have to make sure that businesses can thrive in our state. We have to make sure that we're open for business in the state of New York. And I'm proud that we developed Startup New York, something that the governor advocated for, that we supported wholeheartedly. I was certainly in favor of expanding casinos around the state of New York. to increase jobs and education dollars. So I think what the IDC, provided and will continue to provide as a separate conference is a stable, smart governing force in the state Senate.
You've talked about some of the policy issues that the IDC will be able to focus on as a result of this transition back working with the Democratic caucus. There obviously is a political aspect to it as well. You're facing a primary challenge. The deal, as far as I can tell, means that labor unions will not be assisting your challenger in all this. There are other IDC members who are losing their challengers altogether. Governor Cuomo had something invested in this with the Working Families Party to try to get a Democratic majority back in the state Senate. How much, and let's not forget, you're going to remain co-majority leader of the state Senate in all likelihood under whatever machination happens with the state Senate. So how much of this was political and how much of this was issue-oriented?
Well, first of all, I can only really speak for myself. You know, I based my decision, and really the members of the IDC based the fact on the policy issues. I mean, you know, I don't think it's been any secret. You know, the IDC, you know, is very policy-oriented. We're not shy about expressing our opinions or making sure we get good things done for the residents of the state of New York. So I still have a primary, and I intend to run that primary, run on my record, talk about the things that I've been able to accomplish, and also the things that I want to accomplish upon my re-election. I have a lot of union support. Major unions have endorsed my candidacy. They continue to support me. So I look forward to, you know, a debate on the issues in this primary, and when the dust settles on the primary, then we have more decisions to make.
And so for us political talking heads who love to digest these things, maybe overly so, the fact that there was political pressure on you with the primary, political pressure on the governor from the Working Families Party, and other pressures on other IDC members, not a factor in this decision to caucus with the Democrats.
Let me explain. I think if you look at what happened, you know, was happening, I should say, about 2 weeks ago, a week ago, we were being called on to return to the Democratic conference. And if we didn't do that, we were going to face primaries. I already had a primary, but I guess a more intense primary because there was a lot of labor leaders and unions that were going to support our opponents. That's not happening here. We're not returning to the Democratic fold. We're not collapsing into the Democratic conference. We're remaining an independent Democratic conference that's now going to form a coalition government with the Democrats to get things done. So I think it's a victory for us because I think that's what it's always been about for the Independent Democratic Conference, to be a separate conference and be a smart guiding force in doing good things in the state Senate.
How firm is this coalition deal? If the GOP is, let's say, 3 seats or 3 votes away from having the majority in the state Senate after November's elections, you've got 5 votes. Is there possible that there's another deal struck that reverses this one and you're back caucusing with the, or?
I can't imagine, you know, why, but the only thing I can say is there's a primary now, and you know, I face a primary, some of my other members do. I want to make sure we all win our primary, so we're going to have be very well funded and have a lot of resources to make sure we get reelected and can really get our message out there. And I think when the dust settles on the primary, then we have to see how we can best elect Democrats or continue to elect Democrats, even in primaries, that really support the issues that the Independent Democratic Conference supports. So it's a long way off. You know, things change, but I think right now, I believe, I speak for all the members of the Independent Democratic Conference, we feel that a coalition with the Democrats, the IDC and the Democrats, especially with the IDC remaining a separate conference, is the best way to get things done.
Andrew, did you get the impression after the interview, after the Working Families Conference, the governor called him up and said, hey, Jeff, yeah, you're a Democrat now?
I have a feeling that Senator Klein realized that there was a limited upside towards continuing to have the IDC conferencing with the Republicans. I don't think it was, I have no idea if there was a phone call or not.
I think, though, it's not coincidental, Mr. Carter, that all of a sudden, once that nomination was secured, that the landscape has changed here for the IDC.
Knowing the governor the way that I do, he made one phone call to Klein and said, this is the way it's going to go. Either you're on board or you're against me.
And the funny part is, Andrew, I don't think the governor, I think the governor would have preferred to have the status quo stay the way it was with the IDC. I'm not so sure he's going to be crazy now about having Democrats in the Assembly and Senate saying, this is what we want, let's get it done.
I think he might. I mean, the IDC has actually been fairly effective, and it's been a fairly quiet couple of years in Albany, which we needed. So I think it all depends on how the IDC plays with the Democrats. It's going to be interesting, and I'm going to be hoping to talk to Andrea Stewart-Cousins soon about the relationship between the two of them and how the IDC's outlook jives and where it doesn't with the Democratic caucuses, because there are some areas. I mean, Klein is similar to Cuomo in that socially liberal, fiscally conservative. Stewart-Cousins and the rest of the Democratic caucus are progressive all the way, or for the most part. So there is some room for clash.
It's going to be interesting how this whole thing plays out. All right. Earlier, as you saw, I spoke to New Jersey Senator Bob Menendez. Well, when we come back, we're going to be talking about all things New Jersey: Bridgegate, transportation funding, sports betting, and a host of issues here going on in his home state. We'll have that conversation after the break.